Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center. And today we're taking a look at the most underrated pocket knives that are under $100 right now. You may have even forgotten that some of these knives exist, but they definitely deserve a look. Let's check them out. Now there's some designs out there that get the lion's share of our visibility. They're classics for a reason. They're fantastic knives. Things like everybody knows what a Delica is. Everybody knows the Griptilian. Great knives all, but they do cast a shadow over some of the other knives that are out there that are still very cool pieces. You can kind of think of some of these knives as like your favorite indie band that hasn't really made it big yet, but they're still putting out quality stuff. And since we're living in a golden age of the knife industry, a lot of them are available for under $100, so that's what I've kind of pulled together here right now. Now, on the budget side of things, everybody knows things like the Ontario Rat 1. It's always a great recommendation, but something that's a little bit more expensive that still is another great alternative to that knife, in my opinion, is the KABAR Jarosz 7505 that's available for about $40 right now. Now, I can personally say that before I started working here at the Knife Center, this is one that I looked at and kind of dismissed out of hand. It just didn't seem like it was my thing. But now that I'm here and I've been able to handle it, I really am impressed by what KABAR have managed to put together here, especially for the price. The blade is about 3.5 inches long. We've got AUS 8 stainless steel, which is a good entry-level steel. One of my favorites, in fact, on the more affordable end of the spectrum. And we've got a very useful drop point shape that's good for just about anything. Now the blade stock is a little bit on the thicker side. You know, they could have maybe saved a little bit of money if they'd gone with thinner, but you are going to get more strength as a result, which is definitely appreciated. And in fact, this whole knife is put together in a very robust way. You can see here the liner lock features very thick pieces of steel as well. That's going to give you good lockup and provides a really solid anchor. It really feels like this is a knife that you could beat through and put through some heavier jobs than you might expect, given it's only a $40 knife. But the handles are comfortable at the same time. They are glass-filled nylon, but they feature a nice radius to the side, so it really nestles into your hand quite well, and in fact, it even points the blade down just a little bit, so that the tip points pretty intuitively. In addition to your utility needs, this could also make a good backup tactical knife if you needed something like that. Now, speaking of that blade again, I did mention it's a little thicker, so you have that robustness built in, but in order to keep it slicing pretty well at the same time, they've given you a hollow grind, and the edge is not super thick either. They've managed to keep it pretty thin for a affordable production knife, which is quite nice. The liner lock holds it nice and secure, folds up quite well as you can see, and then the action is quite good, which is one of the things that surprised me the most. This does have a simple synthetic washer here, but they've managed to tune it very well. The action is great. You get a great shape overall. Really, a lot for your money right here. Now, speaking of other budget classics, everybody knows the Spyderco Tenacious. It's a great knife, but one of my favorite Spydercos that comes in under the $100 mark that I don't really hear people talking about a lot is the Cat. The price on these is just under $62 right now, and this is a smaller knife. In fact, I've owned one of these in the past, specifically for an instance where I needed a blade that was under 2.5 inches long. In its current form, we get BD1N stainless steel, which is a really solid performer. A little bit of a step up from that AUS 8 down below. And as I said, the length is under 2.5 inches. But what you see with this design is a lot of those Spyderco classic features that you see on a number of their different designs. They're kind of some signature hallmarks that make this knife perform like a much bigger knife. The key thing, of course, is going to be this full-size finger choil right around the pivot area here. It spans the end of the handle and the heel of the blade, and that gives you a really good amount of grip on this knife. I can get all 4 of my fingers around it, and I do have slightly larger hands, but at the same time, it folds up nice and compact. We've got Spyderco's deep carry wire pocket clip as well that makes it look very unobtrusive, and that is reversible for either side. Opens up very easily thanks to that finger hole right there, signature Spyderco element again. And I also like the addition of the thumb ramp here at the back that gives you good purchase when you're needing to pierce things with it. Full flat grind is going to give you some good slicing geometry, but it's just a really cool piece, and as I said, often overlooked. I think it's a fantastic little design that definitely deserves more credit and more attention. All right, next up, I've got a couple of folders from Outdoor Edge, which is not really thought of as a knife company per se. I think they're more commonly known for their outdoor equipment as a whole, but they actually do put out some really compelling knife options, including this, which is the medium Conquer flipper, which comes in at about $38. As you can see, we've got a very distinctive design because they've actually partnered with a big name designer. This is actually a Jerry Hossam designed knife. The fact that they're going to go to someone like him definitely tells you they're not phoning it in, and they definitely did not phone it in with the construction on this knife either. The blade, this is the medium version. There is a 3.5-inch large version, but the blade on the medium is right at 3 inches long. Got plenty of recurve, a nice little belly, very distinctive blade shape. It is 8CR13 MOV stainless steel, which gets a bad rap sometimes, but honestly, it's almost identical to AUS 8. I think it's a very solid steel, again, keeping in mind the budget price point of these knives. One of the nice little features in terms of the fit and finish that you usually have to spend a little bit more money on, you've actually got a two-tone finish on the blade. You've got stone-washed hollow ground main sections as well as the swedge, and a horizontal satin finish on the flats of the blade. Really nice contrast. Plus, I'm always a big fan of that stone-washed finish. Scratches from use are actually going to blend in a little bit there, keep your knife looking nicer longer. This is a frame lock stainless steel, and you can see we've got a gray finish on the back, as well as a sort of orange and black G10 on the front. It's got a really nice shape. You can see right here, there's even sort of a scallop taken out, and that's a really nice place for your fingertips to rest when you're gripping the knife. On top of all of this, and probably the most impressive given its price point, we've actually got ball bearings in the pivot. This is not a cheap pivot construction, which gives us very, very good action on a very distinctive knife. If your tastes run a little bit more traditional, I've got another outdoor edge here that's even more affordable at 35 bucks. This is the Divide with a 3.5-inch blade of 8CR. The blade itself is a little bit more traditional, but as you can see, there are some echoes of that Conquer, and that's because this Divide was actually co-designed by Jerry Hossam, as well as David Block. They two together came up with this design. Got hollow grinds again, and a nice darkened or a nice blackened stonewash finish overall. But even though there are still some very distinctive elements to that blade shape, it's going to be a little bit more traditional in terms of sharpening and actual use. Either one, though, is going to make a great utility option. The handle is a little more straightforward. We've got a red and black G10 with a little outdoor edge shield here right in the center of the handle, but a more neutral shape overall. It's going to fit a good number of hand sizes. I'm slightly larger, again, as I mentioned. I've still got all 4 fingers here, and there's even a little bit of space out on the other side of the beak for folks with really big hands. They could get in there and still have a solid grip on this knife. Stainless steel frame lock again, pocket clip on one side, and again, the most impressive thing, especially now at a $35 price point, ball bearing pivot with fantastic action. It feels really solid, and you're definitely getting a lot for your money with this blade. Now, speaking of excellent flipping action, Steel Will really gets it right, but they've got a lot of models out there, so much so that some of the more simpler designs like this Chatbot may get overlooked a little bit, which I think is a shame because this knife coming in at 60 bucks has pretty much everything you want in a modern affordable pocket knife. We've got D2 steel, a little bit over 3 inches long, with a very useful drop point shape. I can't harp on that enough. It's one of those versatile blade shapes that's going to work with just about anything, or at just about any task, I should say. The handles are G10. This is the green version right here, but there's also black available, as well as a blackened stonewash blade or satin blade option, depending on what you prefer. We've got a liner lock, and it's inset, which provides a nice little look, so you don't have to see the whole liner going all around. Makes it a little bit more clean looking. And we've got a pretty deep carry pocket clip that is reversible for either side, holding the knife in a tip-up configuration. And as I said, the action is really exceptional. Got ball bearings in the pivot. It's tuned really well. Again, this is a knife that can do just about anything you're gonna need from a knife this size to do. All right, most of these knives so far have been a bit more on the utilitarian side, although that first outdoor edge definitely has some style going on with it. But if you want something a little bit more premium, and again, you're looking for something a little bit different from what you're used to, I've got a few fancier knives here for you to take a look at. The first is from CRKT. This is a Ken Onion design. This is the Slacker. Price on this is about 80 bucks. And for that, you get a few things. We've got 4116 stainless steel, which is very fine-grained stainless. It's gonna take a wickedly sharp edge very nicely. We've also got milled aluminum handle construction, as well as CRKT's field strip mechanism, which some people may see it as just a little bit of a party trick. You are able to take this knife apart without any tools, But what that does is it's very easy to clean this knife out if it ever gets dirty or gunky, because you're not having to fight the pivots or anything like that. Now the way this works, you pop that lever right there and then unscrew the thumb wheel at the back, and all the pieces come apart like that in 3 distinct pieces. Now assembly is exactly the same, just in reverse. Now personally, what I've always found to be very impressive about the way CRKT executes this field strip mechanism is when you put it back together, the blade is still centered, you don't need to adjust it at all, and the action is still excellent. It's I find that very impressive, I have to say. Some flippers out there or other knives, if you take it apart to adjust something and you go to put it back together, you know that you might have to adjust some screws, fiddle around with the tensions from each side in order to get that blade centered back up. On all the field strip knives I've ever tested out, every time you put it back together, things are nice and centered and the action is ready to go. I've also got to say that overall, I think this design is my favorite field strip knife that CRKT has so far, but doesn't get talked about too much, which is a real shame. You can definitely see some Ken Onion DNA in here, although it's a little bit more restrained than some of his more usual stuff, which is pretty cool, I think. You've got a nice modified Wharncliffe profile, full flat grind, very nice shape for EDC. You may give up a little bit of the versatility of a drop point, but for most of your daily tasks, you're probably not giving up too much. You're still going to be able to get done what you need to get done very well. Even better at things like opening packages, makes a great letter opener as well. But anything where you're going to really appreciate a very fine tip, you're going to be able to do here quite well, especially any draw cuts, anything where you're dragging the tip across something, maybe a cutting board or a craft mat, very nicely done. And even if you never use that field strip mechanism at all, it's just got clean lines, very gentlemanly-like, would make a great knife in a suit pocket or just your jeans or whatever you happen to be wearing today. This next knife is going to be something really nice if you like sort of a high-tech look a little more. This is the Kershaw Norad that comes in at about $70 right now. You may be kind of seeing a theme with some of the materials we've looked at, and in this case we are seeing D2 tool steel again, coming in about 3.3 inches on this one. We've got a really nice shape. It's, I guess it's technically a drop point, but we still have a very acute point. We've also got a nice continuous belly so that longer slicing cuts are going to be very nice, especially as your elbow moves, that edge is kind of going to follow along with you, which I always appreciate. The handles are stainless steel and it is a frame lock again, kind of similar to some other things we've seen. We've also got some carbon fiber inlays to kind of spice things up, break up the lines of the knife just a little bit. Now this is a flipper design and we do have bearings in the pivot. That's Kershaw's KVT bearing system. As you can see, we have a very subtle flipper tab. There's not a whole lot sticking out, but still very effective and easy to use, and it hides away inside the handle when the blade is open, so you don't have anything kind of protruding or jutting out here. Gives it a cleaner look overall, and might be a little more easy to use since it's not constricting your fingers so much. You can also see we've got a dual fuller, one on each side of the blade, and that also actually gives us a couple other opening options. First and foremost, two-handed opening, because that's very easy to grip, but you can also use your thumb kind of riding that track back as you rotate it out, which is another nice way to open it and a little less flashy if you want to be a little more under the radar when you're opening it. But this knife is put together with a lot of precision. It feels very good. They've even managed to keep the cutout for the lock bar nice and thin. You don't have a big gap between the two, which again speaks to that precision. I've definitely seen tighter lines there, but you usually have to spend a lot more money to see that. But while we're back here, we've also got a deep carry pocket clip. Again, this is reversible as well, so anyone can carry this pretty easily and have a really stylish piece when they're ready to cut something. All right, so these next two knives I'm going to talk a little bit about first. They're both very similarly priced, within about $1.50 of each other, from the 96 to 98 range, and each one represents a different way you can go about spending your $100 towards a knife. In one corner, we've got the Boker Plus Gulo Pro, and in the other, I've got the Spyderco Chaparral. And the main difference you see between these two is with the Chaparral, they've chosen to spend the money on a more premium blade material. We've got CTS XHP steel here, but with the Gulo Pro, they've decided to put it towards the machining and the fit and finish. We've got D2 tool steel here, which is not as premium for sure, but the feel of the knife overall definitely punches way above a $100 price point. So let me talk a little bit more about that Boker first. The blade is about 3 3/8, D2, versatile drop point. I've said enough about that shape so far, you guys know it's gonna work. The handles are stainless steel, which are a little bit heavier and sometimes seen as a little bit cheaper, so to speak. But let me disabuse you of that notion, because the thing that really matters is what the company does with it, and they've really done a good job here. It's milled out quite nicely, the fit and finish is excellent, and they've even machined out some pockets on the inside of the knife to remove a little bit of that weight and balance the knife better overall. In addition to that, we've got a very classic color combination going on here. That stainless steel comes in sort of a matte gray, and we've got blue accents both on the thumb stud, the pivot collar, the pivot itself, the attachment hardware, and the pocket clip, which is a right side tip up pocket clip. Now that sort of color combo is very heavily associated with some premium titanium frame locks out there, and it is definitely, again, it's one of those things I hate to say because it's a cliche, the concept of a poor man's Sebenza. For under $100, this Boker Plus Gulo Pro really is a fantastic option if you want something that feels extra premium, but don't have the money to spend on it. The frame lock locks things up nice and solid. No blade play whatsoever on this example right here. We've got ball bearings in the pivot, which some of those higher end titanium frame locks don't even get that. And it pops open very, very nicely. So if you've got about $100 to spend and want the nicest knife you can get, this is definitely one of my top recommendations. If, however, you've got about $100 to spend and you prioritize the cutting performance more so, then definitely check out the Chaparral. The blade steel here is CTS XHP, like I mentioned, so you've got more edge retention than anything else we've looked at so far. It's definitely a premium particle steel. And like the Cat from before, this knife also has a bunch of those signature small Spyderco knife elements that make it work so very well. The blade itself still has that high flat grind, or that full flat grind, which is going to make it a nice cutter, and that's even bolstered further by how thin the steel they've gone with here. Part of that's down to cost. Again, the thicker the steel, the more expensive it's going to be. So for this to hit the price that it is, you might expect some thinner steel, but the results you're going to get from that performance-wise are definitely worth it. You're not going to be prying with a folder, especially a small folder. You want to slice, so a thin blade is going to be what you want. And that's only going to make the slicing capabilities of this Chaparral even better. Back to the handle. Again, similar story to the Cat. We've got that nice finger choil there, so you can get a nice 4-finger grip, even though this blade is a little bit longer than the Cat. We're about 2.8 inches overall on the blade length. But you can still get a really nice grip on it, cut things very well. You've got Spyderco's bidirectional FRN in this case, as opposed to G10, so you've got a good amount of traction. And that really is the difference between this knife and that Gulo Pro. The steel on the Chaparral is definitely a higher performer, but the handle is definitely not as nice as it could be if they were using different materials for the blade. But it's cool because you've got both options in this price range to take a look at. All right, this next knife I'm going to show you, I've got one more. It actually breaks the ground rules we've set because it does come in above $100 right now. However, I think it's a fantastic knife and it's one of my favorites that doesn't nearly get enough attention. It's the X1 Microflip from Hogue, and this series starts at just under $130. Now the reason this costs a little bit more, point the first, is this is made in America. This is not an imported knife like everything else we've seen so far today. But that being said, the amount of precision you get here in the fit and finish and the materials, it still feels like a really good deal to me. This is not an overpriced knife at all. And you definitely don't feel like you could get away with spending less money on an import and getting something better, because I challenge you to find anything that's quite this well put together for the price, no matter where it comes from. We've got aluminum handle scales here, or aluminum handles, I should say. They aren't exactly scales. They are big blocks of aluminum, and you can get them in a bunch of different colors. This is one right here is one of the matte gray finish options. The blade steel is under 3 inches long, so it's a good length for everyday carry, and you can get it in 2 flavors. You can get this Wharncliffe profile as well as a drop point, and the steel is CPM 154, so really nice premium option with a really nice stone washed finish on it, so you're going to be able to put it to work very nicely. This Wharncliffe here, we've got a hollow grind, really acute point, nice sharpened edge. I've said before, I think Hogue, cold steel as well, but I think Hogue takes the cake for some of the best factory edges in the business. Now this is a button lock flipper, I'll close it up here. We do have a secondary safety that, that only works when the blade is open, however. It won't hold the blade closed, but it does give you some extra protection when the blade is open. Now there's a lot of companies out there that do a button lock flipper, but a lot of times the action isn't necessarily superb. That's not the case with the Hogue. Just listen to this. It's so nice. You can just hear it. I don't even have to hardly describe it, but I will anyway. It's super snappy. The action's very fast, feels nice and crisp, very tight. There's not a lot of wiggle room. Actually, I don't feel any wiggle room at all on this particular button lock variant, but you still do have, as I said, that secondary safety there. So if you were nervous about pushing that button, if you grip the knife really hard, you've got that backup there, so you're not gonna have to worry too much. As far as other features, we've got a nice simple pocket clip on the side. It is reversible for left or right carry, and you can see we've got a nice plate with some extra screws on the opposite side to kind of sit in that, that machined out section so that you don't have some like kind of janky holes on each side. Definitely a little bit more of a premium touch. And like pretty much every Hogue out there, this is an Alan Olishewicz design. So yeah, you've got a lot of pedigree on that one as well. Like we've got Ken Onion, Jerry Hossam, and Olishewicz on this table. Hard to go wrong. One last note about this whole range, you can actually get this in a push button automatic version as well, if that's your thing, including a California legal sub 2-inch blade version. So it's a solid lineup and definitely deserves a lot more look. You know, the Hogue Deca is a great knife that's getting the lion's share of the EDC attention right now, and rightfully so. It's a fantastic knife, but check out the X1 Microflip as well. All right, everyone, that's all I've got to show you right now. These are all my opinions on some of the most overlooked or underrated pocket knives out there that can be had for under $100 or just a few bucks more. What did you think of these knives? Let me know down in the comments which one was your favorite, or if there's another knife out there that you love that other people just don't seem to think about all the time. Let us know. I'd love to hear about that. In the meantime, if you want to get your hands on any of these knives, we will leave links in the description that'll take you over to KnifeCenter.com where you can get your orders in there. And make sure you're signed up for our Knife Rewards program if you're going to do that, because if you're going to buy one of these knives, you might as well earn some free money to spend on your next one. I'm David C. Anderson from the Knife Center. I hope you're all staying safe, sane, and sanitary out there. See you next time.